Hi, I'm Marguerite from MoveToTacoma.com, and I'm here today with my friend, my colleague, my niece Keryn, as we do every year to talk about what the heck is going on in the Tacoma real estate market here in 2023.
My, have things changed?
They have changed. So off camera here, we have a little chart of the peak prices in Tacoma and Pierce County and in Seattle, and then what they are now. So Keryn, would you like to share what is going on with prices? Are they going up or have they gone down?
Yeah, I always want to make my answers harder than straightforward because I'm like, well,
Right.
It depends.
Yes.
Like we were talking about, prices have gone down, but that's not necessarily going to mean it's more affordable for a buyer.
Right. We're going into the spring housing market, which is going to be the bulk of the transactions for the year. They tend to happen in the spring, early summer in Tacoma because that's when houses are pretty, and we do expect the prices will trend back up. But let's not tease any further. What was the peak in Tacoma, and where are we now?
In 2022.
Yeah.
In 2022, the
spring.
peak in spring was $480K.
Okay, almost 500. And now?
And now it's $430K.
And are buyers going to feel that as more affordable?
Well, maybe not as far as numbers, but I will say, for me personally, my perception of it as an agent, the market's kind of nice because even if that number's the same, your experience of buying a house, in my opinion, right now, it's going to be different. Like it's not the same game that it was last year.
So I think setting the expectation for a buyer that because the interest rates have gone up, even though you're not buying a $500,000 house, you might be buying a $450,000 house now, your payment is still probably higher because the interest rates have gone up so much, unless you're paying cash. Lucky you.
But you have more, well, depends. But you have more time. Like there's such a long period there where my buyers, they were having to make a decision. Like we would see a house one afternoon and they'd have to decide by that night or early the next morning. And that still happens every now and then if it's like check, the house checks all the boxes. But my folks, I'm like, take your time. Let's talk about it in a couple days. And that's happening more and more frequently. And people with special circumstances or they have to like sell their house first before they can buy and they have to be contingent. Like I just had somebody, they were contingent. Their offer was accepted. They got closing costs. They were able to negotiate like a new roof and stuff like that. That was like unheard of this time last year.
Right.
So there's cons and pros to every market. I think you just have to look for your situation and where there's pros.
So there are a lot more of those opportunities. Like time on the market is going to be a little bit longer. You're going to probably be able to have a home inspection and maybe sleep on it and think about whether this is right. Really look at other options. I think there are still though those houses that go really quickly. It looks like especially in the under 500, like that is a very competitive price point because our median income in this county is like $75,000 for a family, and you need to make a little more than that in order to afford our median price home. So the $400,000 houses, anything under four, probably still extraordinarily competitive, right?
Yeah, and depending on the neighborhood too. And that's why I try to give people straightforward answers, but there's always variation. And what's even, to get even more complicated, it's interesting to me that there's patterns, but still there's times. I was in a stats meeting one week and they're like, if you have a listing in these areas, list it now because we're seeing multiple offers like out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, things have been like this, there's a pattern, but right now, if you list, put an offer review date. Like I tell people to stay fluid and to be able to adjust accordingly because I have people that we're going to list like 2 months out and I'm like, everything I say, I'm like, but we'll check back in because things change.
Things are changing. It's not just going steadily up. Right now, it could be... So that's a great segue into how sellers are experiencing the 2023 real estate market because it's a different conversation, right? Before spring 2022, you might have multiple offers. You might have people bidding up the price. You might have people waiving or like making up the appraisal gap if your house doesn't appraise. That kind of stuff. Is that still happening?
I laugh because when the market was really hard for buyers, I had so many buyers. And then last year I had so many sellers, and especially when things switched, I had so many sellers, and they were my buyers, and so they're like, it's our turn.
Paybacks.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, it kind of sucks. And they're like, it always sucks for us. So I'm like, okay, you're still going to make like 70 grand in 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's good. But yeah, like, we may or may not have an offer review date depending on when we list.
And by that you mean we're not going to know we're going to have offers at the end of the weekend after we list or something. We might be keeping it open, waiting for the first offer to come in. Okay.
And it might be not advantageous to make people wait who, if we have the buyer right away that wants it right away, maybe let them have it right away.
Just take the first offer.
Yeah, maybe.
It depends.
It depends. Pricing a house is always difficult. Like, I'm sure if I look back at the other videos we did, I always say that. But right now, like back in the day, a year ago, 2 years ago, I was less concerned about underpricing, and I thought, we're going to get multiples, so people bid it up naturally. Right now, it's like you want to be low enough to get interest. You don't want to come on too high, but I'm also scared to death of coming on too low, because if we have list offers, we don't want somebody that would have paid more, but they're like, well, they probably don't have any other offers, so why not just offer a list? So when I talk to my clients, they'll be like, well, we take $450, but we really think it's worth $460. I'm like, if you're not excited about $450, depending on what, other houses are selling for right now, like, let's list it at $460.
Right, but unlike before, this is absolutely no market to come in at $500 and just see what the market will do.
God.
Because the last thing you want right now is to develop that stink of a house that has sat on the market for too long, because every buyer is looking for that house to lowball, right?
I've had this conversation a lot with sellers, and people don't know what they don't know, but I think what some sellers don't understand, because they think, what's the harm? We'll just try.
Right.
The harm is you can end up chasing the market. As things fluctuate, as things go down, you're actually going to sit on the market longer and make less than you would have if you came on lower. It's kind of hard to wrap your brain around, but
take the time right before you list to look at who's our competition, what's pricing doing in the neighborhood right now, and make that price strategy then. Don't get hung up on what your neighbor's house sold for last year.
Please don't. And the other thing is, I have a house that I'm very sentimental about now, so I get it. But what people say is people tend to think their house is worth more.
Of course,
because
we
they
all
love
do.
it.
Yeah.
But I have to talk people through comps too, houses similar to theirs, because sometimes they'll be like, well, this one sold, for $60K higher than what you're telling me. And I'm like, that's not the same house. It's just not. Like, yeah, maybe it's in the same area, or maybe it's like really close to your house, but it's a completely different area.
Right. Tacoma is so street to street.
The architecture is different, you know, so talking people through that can be a fun challenge. So it's still, but what I'm telling people too, like as I'm talking them through these things, especially buyers who went through the pain of like winning the house and going through the frazzled market, is most people are still making money. So I'm like, yes, maybe you're not going to get 10 offers. Maybe you're not, going to have people waiving their inspections, but you should make money still.
Well, and now sellers do have the option potentially to to make an offer on another house contingent, and then list their house and not have to have that double move, where pretty much everybody had a double move or had to find a house in the heat of the moment, in the last few years. So that's a big advantage that wasn't present.
You might actually be able to get a good house contingent is the other thing. Because before I'd be like, well, maybe, but you're probably going to get the scraps. Like someone who didn't take the time and the effort and maybe like totally missed the mark on price or something.
I think the final thing that I'd like to talk about is preparation. It's always a good idea to make sure your house is clean and staged and beautifully photographed and well presented. But in a busy market, I can understand why people might disregard it, because even if they get less money, they're getting so much more money when the prices are going up. But right now, how crucial is preparation?
I have changed my opinion on this a little
Tell
bit.
me.
Okay. It depends.
Oh, God.
So it does. It depends. It depends. How much money are we talking that you're reasonably going to profit? Because I've had folks, if you're in the lower range and you're really tight on funds, and you might be in a situation, I have folks where it's like, we're going to see what happens, which as an agent, that's a little stressful, but it is what it is. And and you want the opportunity to come off market if you don't sell.
Yeah.
Like maybe you don't want to invest $2,000 in staging. But if you're making on the low end, like 50,000, like, yes, I think you should invest a little in staging. The other thing is though, like, is it owner occupied? Like, do they live there? Like, are you going to clean it, paint, carpet? Like, there's all these different things you can do to prepare a house, and they're different importance.
Right.
So it's kind of like the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of, house preparation. So do I think I've had people where timelines get shuffled and we're in a hurry and we end up staging a dirty house. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And it's what can we reasonably do in your time frame with your budget.
So Maslow's hierarchy of,
yeah, I love this.
of listing the house,
student.
we've got to take care of clean. It needs to be a clean house.
That's
even if it's a
minimum.
Fixer, like vacuum, wipe it down, like it's got to be clean.
Even if the carpets are stained and stuff, maybe even if the paint's a little, it needs to be deep cleaned.
And then I would say financeable repairs, right? Anything that's going to keep, especially at the 500 and below range, anything that's going to keep your first time buyer from being able to purchase it, like doing those basic repairs. And then we start looking at staging, fixtures, fresh coat of paint, that kind of thing, right?
Well, and what I forget too, as my perception's a little skewed because I've been to a zillion home inspections.
Right.
So I'm like not really scared of much anymore. But I forget, like, first time home buyers get scared of everything.
Yeah.
Like literally everything. And I
Yeah.
have to talk them through it. Like they're like, oh, this needs so much. I'm like, what? Just some carpet and some paint,
Right.
Like, but people really get turned off to that because I have sellers that are like, it's not a big deal, who are more knowledgeable. They're like, why should we have to do that? It's not a big deal. To them, it's a huge deal.
And I think that what's interesting to observe in buyers when the market becomes more competitive and there's more choices for them, they might choose the house that's like clean and freshly painted and, in an inferior neighborhood on an inferior block because the house is tight and ready to go over the really amazing location that's shabby. And that's not every buyer, but not every buyer is in a position financially or time-wise to fix a house up. So the more objections you can remove before listing, the better.
Well, and with the interest rates, people are really looking at their monthly payment.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, I'm stretching it. I don't want to have to come in here after I've paid, my down payment, my closing costs and all that and have to freaking pay somebody to paint and change out the flooring and so on.
That makes so much sense. So Tacoma real estate market in 2023 on the buy side, interest rates are up, payments are up, prices are down slightly, but it's still competitive if you're buying something under 500. And on the sell side,
it's totally doable.
Totally doable.
I mean, some people might give me side eye for this, but I really like this market.
Yeah.
Like coming from, 6 years of pre-inspections and, buyers putting in multiple offers and losing and all the cash buyers and coming from the COVID scariness.
Right.
I'm like, we got this.
We got this. It depends.
Yeah. Every situation's different, but there's opportunity for everybody.
That's great.
I really believe that.
Thanks for coming on and explaining this.
Thanks for having me.
Move to Tacoma.com.